And we're live. Welcome to CAD Live. And I'm joined by a very special guest, friend of the show, Mr. Ryan Christensen of Hypnosis for Men. How are you doing, sir?
Doing really well. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. It's been a minute, hasn't it, since we did one of these?
It's been quite a while, actually. I think it's been a few months.
It has. I think actually looking back at the last one, it was around December. I think we did that last one. So it's really good to catch up again. And for guys who aren't aware of you and your work, did you want to give a brief intro?
Sure. My name is Ryan Christensen. I am a master hypnotist these days. I'm also a rapid transformational therapy practitioner, which means that my job is basically to help men rapidly identify and surgically unfuck all the limiting beliefs that they have that are kind of holding them back from success in life in all their different areas.
Absolutely, because and we talked about this last time, and no doubt we're going to go into this more as we get into this show. But the thing is, I myself, as somebody who works with guys, helping guys how to have better dating lives, and having gone through that process myself, yes, game or dating skills can teach you a hell of a lot, and there are a lot of principles and things that you need to learn. But let's face it, a lot of guys who come to this space, myself included, actually had underlying issues that needed to be dealt with as well. And game will only take you so far. And sometimes you get a guy who comes to you and, you need to just take a step back and think, well, hang on a minute. You need to look at some of these underlying things first. You need to look at why you're unhappy. You need to look at why you've got these traumas and these hang-ups and do something about them.
Absolutely. Well, one of the big sayings in the pickup in the dating sphere is this idea of, two rules, basically: be attractive, don't be unattractive.
Yeah.
And game will definitely help you, teach you how to have those attractive behaviors and push all those buttons so you can actually attract the women you want to. But unless you take care of that second piece, that whole don't be unattractive piece, you're still not going to have the success that you want. Because you're going to be continually shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to be continually giving off all these subtextual, subcontext signals, unconscious signals to women that are going to turn them off and make them not want to be around you, not want to be able to close, all those kinds of things.
Absolutely. And I was years ago, I remember telling you this before, but I was out and about. I was learning about dating skills. I was in the bars. I was chatting to girls and things like this. And I was having a degree of success, but underneath it all, I could feel this sadness, this residual sadness that was still there. And I was still dealing with stuff frankly, from childhood that hadn't really been dealt with. And I then went to get some help with that stuff. And over a period of time, I went down a therapy route. I went down a counseling route. And obviously your work is more around hypnotherapy as such. But nevertheless, I needed to do something to deal with that underlying stuff. And if I hadn't, I don't believe that I would have, had the success that I saw otherwise.
Oh, absolutely. And I had to do the same thing whenever I started getting into this part of the community, working with John from Modern Life Dating over in the Body Language Mastery course. It was because I wasn't having the success that I thought I should be, right? I was making six figures. I was a good looking guy. I was in relatively good shape, right? I'd been through a number of relationships. I'd had some success with women, but after getting out of my second marriage and the relationship after that, like I was just getting nowhere and getting nowhere near the results that I expected to, given where I was in life. And it was working with them and having the guys be brutally honest, a little bit too brutally honest sometimes about like how many gaps I had in my understanding of where I was and just all the little things that I was doing to shoot myself in the foot and like bring myself to a point where I couldn't succeed, right? And it was by taking care of those things that actually allowed me to get the success that I have now. It allowed me to start up my business. It allowed me to be with a younger lady like half my age for close to a year and a half now, getting a lot of success that I wouldn't have otherwise had because I had to fix those things in order to allow myself to actually leverage all the talents of success that I had, right? It doesn't matter how much money you make if you don't feel like you're worth it. I worked with a guy the other day who had taken several companies public, was a multi-millionaire, drives a McLaren, in great shape for his age, is in his 50s, and believed he couldn't go dating because he didn't have anything to offer women because he was no longer a CEO.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
which is mind-boggling to me and to somebody who's kind of done the work. But at the base of it, man, if you don't have that intrinsic self-value, if you haven't done the work to take care of yourself and fix your baggage and figure out what the heck is holding you back, right, you're going to be in the same position where you've got everything the world has told you needed and still not be successful.
Definitely. And of course, one of the things we want to talk about today is the fact that we are, well, in many places in the world, not everywhere in the world, but in many places in the world, we are starting now to come out of lockdown. So certainly in the UK was pretty badly hit with COVID, but the vaccination rollout has been very successful and they are starting to ease things. And actually, rules were eased a little bit this week, and we should be seeing more rules being eased going into April and then into May as well. Now, other countries are a bit further behind, but I think generally speaking, we're looking at a trend now where we are going to start to pull out of this. And of course, that brings with it challenges as well, right? Because if you've been sitting around at home for the last 12 months, effectively on Zoom or playing video games or whatever, and I'm not saying that everyone watching this was like that, but you know, we've all been in this enforced period of inactivity. That's going to have a knock-on effect for people's social skills and social abilities when they go back out there into the wider world.
Oh, absolutely. And it's been good that we've had Zoom and that we've actually had this technological capabilities during this time, because we've been able to do things like hang out with friends on Zoom and at least get some level of interaction and some level of conversation. But you're right, like social skills atrophy. And even in the past few months when I've been going out on dates with girls that I met through the various apps, because it's not as restricted here in the US, it was surprising to see how rusty I got, how quickly, you know, how much more difficult it was just to sit down and have a normal conversation and just like relax and be confident and being able to show yourself as parts of yourself.
Yeah, exactly. What state are you in at the moment? Could you say?
I'm in Virginia right now, which is just I'm just outside of the Washington, D.C. area.
Okay, and is it reasonably open there?
Virginia is. You still have to wear masks in public in terms of like in stores and stuff like that. But like in restaurants, as soon as you get to your table, you take it off, and they're still serving alcohol until like 12 p.m. But a lot of places are still closed, like in terms of, you know, music venues and that kind of thing. Gyms are kind of hit and miss in terms of whether or not they require you to wear a mask if you're working out, that kind of thing. A lot of people still wear masks out in public when they're walking around, so day game is still really kind of hard. But where I'm at, there's kind of like a kind of a town square sort of space where like you see families going out and like having picnics, and people are starting to get out and get moving around again, which is really good. And I think things are going to start picking up a lot more as summer comes on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, as I say, UK, we seem to be heading in the right direction at the moment. France apparently has just gone back into a lockdown, which is, you know, sucks for those guys. But I think broadly speaking, because of the rollout of the vaccines and everything, it feels like we are starting to now be coming out of this, hopefully. And that being the case, obviously, this is really important for guys to have a think about how they're going to, you know, get back into socializing when they go out there. But before we go into that, we were just saying before we were on air, John from Modern Life Dating has just dropped the commercial for his new course that's just actually literally come out within the last few last couple of minutes. So I was thinking we could play it and just show the guys, because it's quite
hilarious.
It's quite amusing, and it's really, really well done. I mean, the production values on this thing are, quite frankly, through the roof. So should we just watch it and we can have a chat about it?
Yes.
Afterwards. Here we go. Is the volume coming through?
No, it's not.
God damn it. I wonder if I can do that. Actually, maybe I'll have to. Okay, let me just try this again. Sorry, that big build up, and then I I messed up the.
Well, it happens.
Oh well. Let's just.
Good. But yeah, it's freaking amazing. He's doing some really, really good stuff with his production.
Let me know if it plays this time. Hang on a second.
Yes, you're good.
Cool.
There is a man whose sole purpose is to empower men with truth. And he is viciously taking out evil forces set out to harm men, one by one. The power of his army grows by the day. He's created a team of trained experts in all disciplines: masculinity, cryptocurrency, dating, combat, fitness, psychology. His one goal is to free the minds of as many men as possible. And he's accomplishing that goal. Now, he's assembling new members of his team, and recruiting them has begun. He and his army are unstoppable.
Who the hell are you supposed to be?
I'm Supreme Leader.
You're a part of this too. How am I part of it? You'll see.
Very good. Very well done. You're on mute, by the way.
It's genius, isn't it? And the production values that he's brought this time are just, I mean, he's got better every time, hasn't he? He's done these commercials.
Yep. He's definitely doing that. And I'm impressed as hell because he's got a great little storytelling talent, right? Especially with everything that's been going on that side of the wall lately with the whole Anthony Dream Johnson, like guilty, whatever the fuck.
Yeah. Really fucking guilty. So very, very funny. So that's good. And I'm looking forward to obviously, to being involved with that particular course. But so anyway, going back to this thing about lockdowns and so on and so forth. I mean, I think probably all of us have been affected by this to some extent. I mean, I've been out and about. I don't feel like I've actually encountered that much solitude over this period of time because I've been either spending it with other people, I was spending it with my girl. I've also been able, through various groups that I'm part of, to go out and meet up with some people and stuff like that. So I haven't quite had the extreme isolation, except in a couple of occasions that perhaps some other people have had. But nevertheless, certainly over here, the world has changed massively from before, where you go out and the streets are full of people the whole time, cafes, bars, etc., to like literally nothing overnight. So how do you think that's affecting guys psychologically?
Man, I'd say that for most guys, I think the isolation has been huge. I know that for me, it definitely has. And I've been doing what I can to, make those connections online and stuff like that. But with all the courses we've been doing, all the work I've been doing for my business and everything else, and just the other stuff.
The crypto course as well. You were involved
in the crypto course
well.
as well. Like it's been a lot of time in the house. And it wasn't until recently that I realized kind of the toll that was taken on me. And I've been taking steps to kind of change that up. Like I'm heading to Miami in a couple of weeks with a bunch of guys to go party it up and have some fun. And I think that's probably the number one thing that guys can do to get ready for post-lockdown is to start socializing with other guys in person again, right? Just getting together with the mates, having a beer, just cutting it up and just relaxing and everything else. Because I think that so many people have had that sense of isolation for so long that they've forgotten what it means to be normal in a social interaction, right? And they've just got this like pent-up need, this pent-up demand for that socialization. And if you start unleashing that on women right away, that's going to come off as incredibly needy and you're not going to get what you want.
Yeah, exactly. You just in your personal situation, you met up with John and the other guys, didn't you? Was that like January? Yeah. So that was quite obviously like a kind of a big social kind of thing. And also,
absolutely was.
I guess you've been spending some time with your girl and stuff as well. So I don't know. Firstly, how was the meetup with those guys? And secondly,
phenomenal.
Was that tricky though? Did you find it like suddenly you kind of been a bit isolated for a period of time, and then going into that, was that a bit odd, or was it all good?
Not as much, because everything sorted itself out in the first 15 minutes, right? As soon as you started talking with everybody, you knew everybody from online. You just had never really had the chance to do that interaction in person. Yeah. So everything sorted itself out very, very quickly, right? And that was a blast, man. Like hanging out with a bunch of guys that are solid guys that have been doing the work, that are all on the same mission, all on the path, doing the same thing, was amazing. Like one of the guys brought me a bottle of whiskey, a rabbit hole whiskey, which I thought was perfect given what I do for a living.
Nice.
Had cigars out on the front porch, man. It was a great time. And that's actually kind of what I'm going to be doing in the next couple of weeks, is going down to Miami and meeting up with a bunch of guys from John's crew and everybody else, just to kind of hang out, spend some time, have some fun, shoot the shit, get into some degeneracy, and cause as much trouble as we can.
Very good.
And you're right. It's been nice having my girl around, that I can spend some time with her, a couple times a week or so. But even then, it's not the same by a long shot as being able to go out and just have that energy and that vibe day in and day out, right? Because it used to be you could just go to a restaurant, go to a bar, go to a coffee shop, hang out on the street, and just have that social energy, that vibe around you. And that would just sort of feed you in a way and kind of like take the edge off the antisocialness, right? But without having that for quite a while, like a lot of guys have a lot of pin-up need. A lot of people have a pin-up need because they just have not had that for a while. And I think they're, the thumbnail you used for this one, where everybody's out in the park as soon as the lockdown ended, just like mass insanity.
Yeah.
Is indicative of what it's going to be like for those first few weeks, at least.
Yeah, well, over here they've just lifted some restrictions, so you're allowed to meet outside now. Woo! And the parks at the weekend were just absolutely buzzing because the weather's been good as well. So it's going to be, as countries open up, it's going to be quite a shock, isn't it? It's going to be like, it's because knowing from last time when we opened up last summer, it was like suddenly it was like bang, and suddenly there were loads of people out and loads of people like expressing their sort of frustrations from the pent upness of the last months and so on. So like, well, here's a question, right? So what's your view on introversion versus extroversion? Do you think that those categories are robust categories, or do you think it's a little bit overly hyped? And the reason I'm asking that will become clear in a second, but I'm kind of thinking introverts, I think, will have been pushed further into themselves through this, right? And they may be finding this even more difficult.
I think that it's like most things, it's a tendency, right? It's not an absolute, you are an introvert, therefore you don't like being around people. You're an extrovert, therefore you can't stand being alone, right? I definitely tend to be more introverted. I tend to be much more of a homebody. I've always sort of been kind of on my own. But even for me, like one of the things I would do on a regular basis is go out and just like go hang out in the bar by myself, even if I'm just like going out to have a beer and read a book or whatever it is, just to have people around me. Yeah, because it's very, very easy, especially if you tend to have that introverted tendency, to allow yourself to become too isolated. And no matter how much like big clubs and stuff like that, I just cannot stand, like going to a soccer stadium, I cannot stand it, right? It's just too much, right? So I prefer small groups. I prefer more intimate settings. I prefer, like live music at a pub as opposed to a big concert, right? That's just more my vibe. Like hanging out in a, high-end like cigar lounge with, cocktails and cigars and enjoying that kind of a vibe. That's more my speed. But even then, even though it's a smaller, more intimate setting, it's still more people. You still have to have that connection, right? Yeah. So when you work with guys, because you're how long are you into your practice now? You've been working on this for quite a while now, haven't you? Yeah. About a year, Fantastic. Congratulations. And you've obviously helped a ton of guys through that period. What are some of the common sort of sticking points that guys tend to have in terms of just being able to go out there and make things happen for themselves socially? Ooh, I'd say that's an excellent question. I'd say there's a few different things. Number one is a sense that they, for whatever reason, don't have anything to offer. right? That they, for whatever reason, they don't have any worth, they don't have any value in themselves, right? So as a result, they don't feel that they can make those connections because they don't have anything to offer. Another thing I see actually quite a lot is this idea that in order to be accepted, they have to figure out what the other person needs them to be. Right. Where they have to, like, you know, they can't approach because they have to figure out what that girl wants and what they want them to say and who they have to be to get that person to like them, which means that they can't actually connect authentically, right? They can never be themselves and be accepted. So they're always trying to figure out who else they have to be, right? Which is a terrible situation, because even if you do get the girl, you don't actually get them because they like you. You get them because they like the fantasy you've given them.
Yeah, true.
You never actually get your own needs met, right?
Yeah,
Those I think are probably the two biggest themes I see for guys whenever they're trying to be more social. Is either they don't believe that they're worth it for whatever reason. Some guys just feel like there's something wrong with them, like they're broken, like they came from a certain background or whatever that makes it impossible for them to connect. Or like even myself, I've always felt like I've been on the outside looking in, so it's kind of hard to believe that I deserve to connect until I get in there and realize how incredibly easy it is. And it's like, well, I'm a moron. But those kinds of deep-seated beliefs they're hard to overcome because you don't even see them really working until you have somebody else step in and say, oh, by the way, here's this massive blind spot you've been ignoring for 45 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the lockdowns happening globally pretty much, obviously unprecedented. We've never seen anything like this before. People have different views on whether we should have seen it in the first place, but nevertheless, it's happened. And it's almost akin to a massive psychological experiment, isn't it? That's been taking place on the world population. Just as have you got some thoughts in terms of what effects this is potentially having on people, or has had, or longer term consequences of this?
That's a huge question. I think that undeniably you're seeing a rise in the number of people who are fear motivated and who are crippled by fear, driven by fear, having their actions dictated by fear. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Whether that's the whole, like, you have to wear one mask, you have to wear two masks, you have to get 2 vaccines and wear 3 masks, and you can't touch anybody ever again, like whatever the heck it is, vaccine passports, all that different stuff. There's a huge portion of the population that has given into the fear and just wants Big Daddy to come in and solve the problem for them, and don't care who Big Daddy is or what that solution is. Yeah. And oh, by the way, they're going to be reacting violently and horrifically to anybody who doesn't act like they do, who doesn't have that fear. And I think you're seeing a big bifurcation, big splitting kind of in society because of that. And I don't know how that plays out. It's strange. It's unusual. I have no idea how that plays out.
Yeah, but in the meantime, sort of caught in the crossfire, because obviously many of us have been, let's say, skeptical about lockdowns as the right way to deal with this, or indeed opposing them, and other people have gone along with it, or they've actually really favoured lockdowns. But regardless of where you are on the spectrum, we've all kind of had to put up with it. So do you think this is having long-term consequences for guys in particular? Do you think that this year out effectively is really going to set a lot of people back in terms of their confidence, their social skills, their ability to go and do dating effectively?
I think that this year has worked as an accelerator. So no matter which way you were going, it pushed you farther in that direction. So guys who were having a hard time to begin with, who weren't doing much of the work, are now far worse off. Because it's given them a year to slack off even more. It's given them even more excuses not to go out. It's stunted their growth and stunted their opportunities even more. The guys who were taking action have thrived in spite of the lockdown, right? Like, I started up a business in the middle of a pandemic. I quit my old career back in October, right? Yeah. Having the extra time made it possible for me to do that, right? And I've worked with dozens of guys, hundreds of guys actually, who have been doing the work and who have seen massive success because they were willing to take action in spite of the difficulty. And I think that willingness to take action in spite of difficulty accelerated them even more, because they saw that they were able to overcome in spite of this unprecedented sort of time and unprecedented sort of situations.
Sure. Yeah. And of course we know, I mean, last year was very successful for me, actually. Last year was one of the most successful years. Well, it was the most successful year I've had in my business. And we know people, and for yourself as well, and we know other people in this space who've done very, very well not from the pandemic, but, you know, they've done very well in spite of the pandemic, if you like, because we just carried on pushing all the way through, and that's great. But it is going to be a bit of a shock to the system, though, isn't it? Unless you're in Japan, where they all seem to be having a great time, but to go out and suddenly you're in the archetypal proverbial pool party in Cancun, or you're in some crowded bar or nightclub again, and you're like, damn, I've got to make conversation with these people that I don't know, and it's not through a Zoom screen. This is a bit weird. I mean, how do you think that's going to hit, guys?
I think it's going to be strange for guys to start with. Like if you don't already have those natural conversational skills, I think it's going to be hard. I think that even for those of us who have had the opportunity to get out and about a bit, it's still going to be rusty, right?
Yeah.
I have absolutely no illusions about my ability to start doing some day game once things open up a bit better, and once I get down to Miami. Like, it's going to be an interesting couple of days before I get my feet under me. But the reality is that the fundamentals really haven't changed. It's coming from a place of non-neediness, being outcome independent, and having interesting stories to tell. And the best part is most people have done nothing but complain for the past year and a half. Right?
Yeah.
It's nothing but negative stories. It's nothing about how terrible everything is. It's nothing but like how absolutely everything has sucked. So if you walk up and you're not complaining, you automatically are in the top 10% of people that they've interacted with that day.
True.
And if you just tell interesting stories about like how, you know, the really cool things, and start talking from a more positive frame, you know, there's that phrase, you know, girls just want to have fun. Well, be fun.
Yeah.
Focus on the positive things, like focus on the things that you've succeeded with, right? No matter how big or how small, right? If that means you've actually managed to beat Final Fantasy 15 on hard mode for the 6th time in a row, like go with it.
Go for it. Go for it.
Sound good. Go for it.
Exactly.
Make it sound good.
Exactly. Go with what you got. You mentioned neediness there, which is a really key aspect of dating advice. Non-neediness really is perhaps one of the fundamental things that we teach. Where do you think neediness comes from, and do you think it affects some guys more than others?
I think it always comes from within. I think it always comes from self-perception. I think it always comes from a idea that you don't have enough, or that you are not enough. One of the two, right? And it shines through in pretty much everything you do. It colors every interaction that you have. If you fundamentally don't think that you have value, then you're always trying to purchase everybody else's attention and affection because you don't feel like you actually can earn it on your own, right? If you don't feel like you're the prize, you're putting everything on a pedestal, right? But once you have that internal sense of worth, once you actually are willing to say, yes, I have value in and of myself, I don't have to prove myself to anybody, I don't have to buy anybody's affection, all of a sudden then you see yourself as a prize, and everything becomes more natural, more easy. Yes, indeed.
I mean, one thing that's happened over the last year is that the young people have been sort of adversely affected by this situation, haven't they? Perhaps even, I mean, worse really than older people, in the sense that, well, I don't know, certainly in England, schools and colleges have been, have been sort of like off for a lot of the time. There's this ridiculous thing where students were actually forced to sort of stay in their buildings, and they had people guarding the buildings so they didn't come out in case they got the COVID, and, you know, terrible things like this happening. But more than that, obviously no socializing and none of the usual sort of coming of age type stuff that you do. And I really feel for people who are sort of like 17, 18, 19, you know, coming into that sort of age, because I found it difficult enough as it was, without, on top of that, not being able to go out for a year. So those people, they have lost a year of development. Do you think that's a serious issue?
Oh, absolutely it is, because those years are the ones where you actually build a lot of your social skills and try and, you know, figure out how to navigate social situations, right? Figuring out how to like negotiate your way through the world, in a world where not everybody's on your side, not everybody wants the best thing for you, not everybody's going to agree, right? And one thing that this whole lockdown situation has done is made it so easy to isolate yourself in communities that only agree with you.
Yeah.
and bubbles where you're only being fed back the things that you already believe. You can walk away from any sort of challenge, any sort of need, negotiate with reality. You can live in your own fantasy world and portray yourself however you choose online, right? And a lot of people do. You know, LARPing is a massive, massive thing online as well as in real life. But at least if you're in real life, there's some challenge to it. You eventually have to negotiate with reality. But if you take people and you, especially in that sort of developmental state where they've been too dependent upon social media and the online world for so long anyway, where they've been able to just like pretend that whatever they choose is reality, that makes things even worse because that's less development. There's more reinforcement of that idea that they don't actually have to negotiate with other people about what's real and what's not.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And it's you're right, because we've all been living in these online bubbles anyway, to some extent, over the last 10 years or whatever. And this last year has just made it all the worse because you've been forced to stay at home. So pulling out of that, I mean, like, of course, the thing with a conversation like this is obviously everyone comes at this from different levels, because there will be guys and girls who are sitting at home and they are just champing at the bit to get back out, and it won't really have affected them that much because they're already, maybe they're extroverts, maybe they're very confident anyway, just naturally or through learned experience, and they're just like, yeah, as soon as the party starts, I'll be there, and it's all good. But equally, there will be plenty of people, and maybe some people watching this, who perhaps they weren't that confident before, and this has even pushed them back further. So is it perhaps the right, perhaps we could think about what a plan might be for a guy like that to start to navigate his way through the social marketplace?
I think there's a lot of things that you could do. I think that one of the less obvious things to do would be to sit down and, before they even venture out in the world again, take care of your style and your image, right? Take care of yourself, do a little bit of self-care. It's like, okay, put your best foot forward, because there's a lot of people have let a lot of that stuff slide for the past year. If you've been able to sit around in your underwear at home for 12 months and haven't had to impress anybody with how you look, a lot of those skills slide. A lot of those things go away. And oh, by the way, it's a nice little way to kind of reset your brain and reset your own attitude in terms of like, I'm going out on a mission, right? So you gear up for the new mission. You look good, you smell good, you take care of yourself, you go get your hair cut, right? You go, start lifting weights, start carrying your body, taking care of your body if you haven't already. That's going to give you like an edge, because most people have lost those skills. So if you do that, automatically you stand out. The next thing I'd say is, like I said earlier, is start just socializing with your friends in public, right? Go out to the bar, go out to the park, just hang out with your friends, and don't even worry about trying to approach women. Just be social again, to take the edge off that neediness, right?
Yeah.
Those two things are going to remove, getting your style and your image back puts you that step ahead of most people who have let that go. Getting that social fix takes away that neediness. I think those two things are going to put you in a lot better position. But other than that, man, it's about sitting down and studying the basics of game again, right? Brushing back up on what day game is, getting your renegade dating blueprint again, right? Going back through there. It's like, okay, let me find the openers. Yeah, link below. Find the openers, figure out what conversational gambits you want to use. Figure out what funny and interesting stories you can use, funny stories about lockdown, ways you got around it, shitty things that happen, all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that guys can do, and you can do this anyway, regardless of a lockdown or whatever, is to spend a little bit of time working on what they call DHV stories, demonstration of high value stories, that you can tell when you're out and about. Now, a DHV story is basically a story where you big yourself up in so many words, but you don't want to make it obvious. So you're not going to walk in and say, oh, I've got an amazing Lambo, and then I stopped off to pick up a hitchhiker, and she turned out to be this famous Victoria's Secret model, and we had sex, and then she fell madly in love with me. It's not that sort of thing. You don't want to be certainly you don't want to be saying anything that's not true, and you also don't want to be seen to be boasting. But if you could compose a little like anecdotes that you can tell, memories from your past, think about things that have happened to you that show you in a good light. And this is from the Mystery Method book, and Mystery outlines a number of key things that women find particularly attractive, and they include things like being leader of men, being very passionate about a cause, looking after young people, looking after kids. I mean, there's some other people put it in the chat, but they're just these different sort of trigger points that tend to impress women, if you like, or they're going to show you favorably to women. So one thing you can do is have a think about your life and think, well, I remember this one time when this little girl fell into the lake and I jumped in to save her, and then blah, blah, blah. You know, those little stories that you might be able to tell. Because one thing that I find is that social interactions, a lot of the time, people are leeching value. Like the guy goes up to the girl and he just starts asking her 100 questions. And actually what you should be doing is giving value. You should be telling the stories. You should be bringing something to the party.
Oh, absolutely. That's 100% correct. That's one of the biggest problems that guys have, is that they don't know how to make the interaction fun for the woman, right? They don't know how to make it something that they can enjoy, something that they can engage in. And if you look back to the concept of frame, if you want the woman to step into your frame, you actually have to create a frame for her to step into. You actually have to build a world for her and demonstrate a world for her that she wants to join. Because if you can't, if you're always trying to find out what she's about and so forth and so on, there's nowhere for her to go except stay in her own place. You're actually kind of stepping into her frame in that instance, right? You're finding out about her world and figuring out how to get into that instead of trying to figure out how to bring in her into yours. Right?
Yeah. So that's one thing that you can do. Thinking about, okay, so what are some of the things that I'm going to talk about when I go out there that are going to be interesting? And you can go as far as to actually sit down and write these out as little paragraphs.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not like you're going to learn it as a script or have it necessarily. Well, you could have it on your phone, I suppose. You could refer to it, but it's just more to because you know the kinds of things that people are going to ask you. You know the kinds of conversational topics that are going to come up. So are there some things that you can drop in to your interactions that are just going to help to sort of smooth things along? So I think that that's a really valuable thing that people could do. And as I say, you could do that anyway, really, regardless of the pandemic. But I think it may help in these circumstances. I also think as well, what's your feeling on warm-up exercises? Because I think that one of the key things, particularly if we're talking about going to interact with women, for example, if the very first approach that you make is on this amazing, beautiful, gorgeous girl that you're almost intimidated by, or you are intimidated by, that's probably not going to go particularly well, because you're going to put too much importance on it and you're likely to fluff it. But if you've talked to 15 people beforehand, including the guy at the local store and the barista and the Uber driver and et cetera, you're going to be much more fluid in terms of your socializing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that there's a concept of like game everybody, right? I think that Robert Greene say that in Art of Seduction, right? Seduce the world, right? If you're always trying to make every interaction good, if you're always practicing those same skills on everyone, whether that's the cashier, whether that's the barista, whether that's the Uber driver, whether that's the random guy on the street you're asking for directions, like if that's your natural way of moving through the world, is just like leveraging those social skills, leveraging those talents, and just making the world an interesting place by being in it, then as soon as you walk up to the girl, you're not trying to be anybody else. You're just being you. It's the most natural, easiest thing in the world, because that's just how you are. Right? Yeah.
Whereas if you just walk up cold and it's very obvious, and again, it's because you're leeching value, isn't it? It's because she understands on some level that the only reason that you screwed up your courage to go and talk to her was because she's attractive and you want something from her. You want her because she's attractive, but what are you actually putting out there? What are you actually bringing to the party? And maybe this is the thing that we forget in lockdown, because in lockdown, we can complain because we can say, well, I'm lonely. I'm not getting the attention that I need. I'm not getting the stimulation that I need. I'm not getting the sex life that I need, et cetera. So then we're going out into the world looking for people to supply that to us. But maybe the way to be thinking about this is, well, hang on a minute, what am I bringing?
Right. And I think that's one of the biggest things that guys get wrong, is this idea that the thing that they have to bring is like resources or, like money and Lambo and that sort of thing. And it's like, no, women want to feel. Women want emotions. Women want emotional variance, right? They want to have an experience. That's what they want you to provide more than anything else. They just want to freaking feel. Yeah. And if you can make them feel, then you've got all the time that you need to take that in any direction you choose, right?
Yeah.
One of these rabbit travels, that's a perfect quote. There's absolutely has been a reset. So many guys have fallen off the wagon so hard. It's not even funny. But that just makes it easier for those of us who are willing to do the work, right? It's almost like they talk about the whole K-shaped recovery in terms of like, the top, the rich guys and capital people are getting all the money from the bailouts and everybody else like falling off a cliff. I think you're going to see the same thing in the dating has happened in the dating market, right? Guys who have been willing to continue going out on dates and have drawn an online game, who have been still studying this stuff, been working on improving themselves throughout the lockdown. As soon as this thing lifts, we're off to the races because we haven't lost any time. In fact, we've actually improved over this time, whereas everybody else has stagnated, gotten worse, fallen off the wagon, and just left everything behind. I think it's going to be very, very telling over the next 6 months or so. Just a level of success that guys who have put in the work are going to have.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose, to be fair to people, if there is a guy who's literally sitting here watching this in his mum's basement, he's got the proverbial pack of Cheetos and all the rest of it. I mean, if that is the case and you have let things go, I think the first thing to say is, listen, don't beat yourself up too much, because obviously we're saying, we've handled it a different way, and that's great, and it's great for the guys that have. But if you have been tempted to, to let things slide a little bit, it's okay. Forgive yourself. It's, we've been through a very weird period, and you've done what you've done. You can't change that. But now is the time to be thinking, okay, now I've got to get a handle on things. Now I've got to start getting my fitness sorted out. Now I'm going to start looking at my style. Maybe starting to, read some game resources online and starting to prepare, right? Because it's not too late, is it, to get yourself ready?
Well, no, because the principle is always just begin where you're at, right? It doesn't matter where you are. The thing that you have to do is get started. And, if anybody reads your series of books, like, they can watch your journey, because you did not start out in a good place.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
It's very much that whole principle of overnight success, 10 years in the making, right? They see you now and say, oh, you must have always been this way. And like, that's not the story at all. You've had to overcome so much crap to get to where you're at and to have the success that you have. And guys just see the end result and say, oh my God, I could never be there. And they don't recognize how far you had to go and how much you had to struggle. And the reality is that any guy can start that upward trajectory at any time, right?
Yes.
Any guy at any time can start. And even if you're not going to reach like your level of success, even if the guy who's 300 pounds in the basement is never going to be banging 9s and 10s, they're going to be doing better than they were. And that's really all you need, is just be a little bit better each and every day. The only thing you need to do is just be better than you used to be, and you're going to have better results than you ever did.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the point, isn't it? Because people will look at game and they'll look at self-development, and they'll sort of say, yeah, but is this guy sleeping with Victoria's Secret models? No, so that's rubbish then. But it's not really about that. What it's about, as far as I'm concerned, is, okay, I'm at this level now. Can I get to a level that is 2 or 3 points higher than that in terms of dating, but maybe in terms of my just other aspects of life, fitness, my wealth, whatever. We're not necessarily saying here you're going to become Jeff Bezos and you're going to also be dating, pop stars or, whatever, famous actresses. It's not that. I mean, yeah, shoot for the moon for sure. But ultimately, it's like, okay, I'm here. Can I improve my situation somewhat? And I believe that all of us can improve our situation to some degree.
Yeah. And it's a really good point that you made there in terms of like, you don't have to be out banging Victoria's Secret models in order to be happy. Myron Gaines on his whole Fresh and Fit podcast had Kevin Samuels on. And Kevin's an older black guy, like done the corporate thing, really successful, has his style and point, everything else. Talks a lot about being a high value man, being in that like mover and shaker in that powerful world. And he said, so many guys think that they have to have that in order to be happy, and you don't. You can have an amazing life, be incredibly happy, be incredibly fulfilled, and not play on that level, right?
Yeah,
I don't necessarily want to be playing with all the BS you have to deal with in Miami to run a yacht party. Not my thing, right? Would it be fun? Sure. Do they have lots of hot women on there? Absolutely. Is it too much of a headache for me? Yeah. I would be more happy with a smaller number of people, with a smaller number of girls who are maybe a couple points lower, playing around 7s instead of 9s. It's like, fine. But the lower amount of drama that I'd have to deal with and less amount of BS I'd have to deal with, for me, that trade-off is worth it. Other guys go the other way, and that's fine. You get to make that choice. It's not about having a particular outcome. It's about finding a way to get the outcome that you want to have.
Yeah, exactly. And I think realistically, like you say, not all of us want to be Dan Bilzerian. I mean, it looks good in the pictures, but, many of us probably don't want that lifestyle. Perhaps we've got other things that we are passionate about that we're working on. And, what we want actually is to have a dating life that fits in around that. So it doesn't, it doesn't have to be the sort of rose tinted Instagram picture of the guy with, popping the bottles and all the models and everything. It doesn't have to be like that. This is more about, can I have autonomy in my dating life? Can I get the kinds of girls that I want, but also within the framework of the life that I want?
Absolutely. And don't get me wrong. Like, once I become a crypto billionaire, like, I'm absolutely going to do a month of Dan Bilzerian. Like, that's going to happen just to see what it's like.
And it's probably not long for you now, is it?
We'll see. We'll see how things play out. I'm hoping, but we'll see. But the thing is that, like, I don't know that that's something I would actually enjoy long term. Like, that's just not who I am. And I know myself well enough to know that that's the case, right? So why would I try and live somebody else's life instead of creating my own?
Yeah, exactly. But I suppose the fundamental point I'm making is that you will get detractors who will say, well, game doesn't work because, is this guy smashing it? Is he doing this? Is he doing that? And it's like, it doesn't, it's not like that, man. This is ultimately, all of this stuff is about being happy in your life, and for the guy who was maybe overweight and who didn't have very good social skills, and he was maybe dating women that, he didn't feel were that attractive, but they were what he felt he could get. And now he's able to date women who are somewhat more attractive, and he actually likes them, and he has a good time spending time with them. That is success, right? You don't have to measure yourself against this yardstick of other people.
Well, I think it's very telling that, Rollo Tomasi, Godfather of the Manosphere, has been married for 25 years now. Right? He's not doing the Dan Bilzerian lifestyle. He's not out chasing tail every day, right?
Yeah.
This is the guy who literally wrote the book on female dynamics, right? So you look at that and you go, okay, there are so many different ways that you can leverage these skills. And that's kind of the entire point of this whole male self-improvement space, right? Is just figure out how to create the life that you actually want to live.
Yes. And that maybe is where people have difficulty, because you could come into this and then you can follow certain content creators and you're seeing all the fast cars and the sort of model-esque women and everything, and you're thinking that's what I'm supposed to want. And perhaps it's something of an age thing, because I mean, obviously we're both of a similar sort of age, aren't we? And maybe and still hanging in there. And maybe that's an advantage in a way, because because you've been around the block a bit. You kind of think, well, actually, I sort of know the kind of lifestyle that I want now, and I'm not drawn in by that sort of advertising that you see, or that kind of marketing that some people put out.
Well, I don't know about you, but I plan to live forever or die trying. So I'm still in my youth. But I will say that for me, a lot of things have really changed over the past year. Like before, because of my career, because I was doing like government work and everything else, like I had to be in the DC area. And there were a lot of limitations on what I could do and the life that I could live because of my work. Well, that changed in October. And like essentially every assumption that I built my life on up until now is no longer valid. So now I have to sit down and figure out, okay, that's who I was, and that's the life I was living, and there were reasons for that. Now it worked out just fine. But now I get to create whatever I want. Yeah. So do I want to play Dan Bilzerian for a while? Is that something I maybe want to try? Maybe I want to do that. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to have a yacht and just have parties on occasion. Maybe I just want to rent one on occasion, right? I can now live anywhere in the world. Where do I want to live? What does that even look like? And so for a while, it makes sense to just say, okay, here's a guy that I know who's living an amazing life, having a lot of fun. Let me try that one on for size, just to see what it's like. I think the trap comes whenever you don't sit back and realize, okay, I'm trying this on for size to see if it's something that I actually want to enjoy and need, instead of this guy does it and he's successful, therefore I have to be like him and live his life to be happy. Yeah, indeed. So I suppose coming out of this lockdown period as well, a key thing is there's not many upsides to what's happened, but there's probably a few. And I think one of them for me has been, particularly actually in recent weeks, has been
to actually have a period where I've been able to not unplug, but sort of pull back a little bit and actually take some time out to reflect and think myself about, okay, so how do I want my life to look? How do I want my life to look? Actually coming into this year when hopefully things are going to start to ease up a bit. How do I want to play this? And I think that actually is quite an advantage. And it occurred to me the other day, actually, because I was thinking, I've quite deliberately taken a little bit of a step back socially and so on, just over the last few weeks, just because I'm sort of sorting some things out, having a think about things. And I was thinking, actually, in a way, because we're still fairly locked down here, I was thinking that this actually is sort of benefiting me in a strange way, because there's less temptation around, there's less to do. It's not like, it's like, oh, there's this amazing party going on Thursday night. Are you going to go? I don't have any of that. So I can take just a little bit of time for myself. What's your view on the value of solitude and the value of sort of contemplation?
Oh, man. You hit the nail on the head. The whole temptation piece is a huge thing. I was working with, I'm working with a number of coaches, Rich Cooper and Xander Whitford-Smith and some other guys as well, just like figuring out different pieces of my life. And I realized that I was spending so much time over the past like month and a half in particular, like chasing women and setting up dates and going on all these dates and stuff, because it was a way to distract myself from the other work I actually had to do, from focusing on my health, from focusing on my business, from figuring out what it is I was going to build as far as a life and where I need to be. And being in that space where you kind of are in that forced isolation, where that temptation isn't as immediate, where you have to go out and do more work to get it. Yeah, it does give you some more space and time to focus on the things that are going to produce more long-term results. Right.
Yes.
Because let's face it, going out and just like going about picking up girls, using them, tossing them aside, like that's a momentary gain, not a long-term gain. Whereas if you take the time to step back and do the strategic thinking of where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years, what life do I want to live? How do I need to get there? What do I need to be doing now to set myself up for success there? Big things, right? And that's kind of why I've actually decided for this year, my focus is going to be on my health and on my business.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things physically I need to fix. Like I have not been able to lose weight for the past year and a half, and it's driving me insane. So that's going to freaking happen. 2021 is when I'm going to finally get that taken care of. I don't care what the hell I have to do to make that happen. If that means giving up alcohol, it means giving up coffee. Like I'll do that if I have to. I'm not going to like it, but I'll do it if I have to. And the other side is getting my business on point. Because if I can do that and it's location independent, then I can do whatever else I want. So it's going back and like figuring out what the holes are in the foundation and filling in those holes in the foundation so that I can then build whatever I please.
Yeah, it's really essential, I think. And it's something that you can neglect a bit if you get caught up in the rigmarole of dating and even the player lifestyle to some extent. Because I feel like dealing with women and bringing women into your life, particularly in terms of relationships, but even if they're fairly casual relationships, like a friends with benefits type situation, for example, you're still, I'd be interested to know your take on this. You're still bringing someone else's psychic energy into your orbit, aren't you? And sorry, that sounds very woo-woo, but you know what I'm saying? You're bringing somebody else with all of their issues and hang-ups and all of the stuff that they've got going on. You're bringing that into your life as well. And maybe sometimes there's an argument to step back from that just momentarily and just be like, no, I need to concentrate on myself for a moment here.
Well, I think that's very true. And even if you don't look at it in terms of like psychic energy and stuff, like every person that you interact with has their own stuff going on. And unless you're being a complete sociopath and like not caring about them at all, you're going to get engaged into that in some degree.
Yeah.
Right? Whether that's their roommate drama or their job drama, or they got trouble with their parents or their car broke down or whatever it happens to be, you're the one they're going to turn to complain to. You're the one they're going to turn to depend on, as long as you have the skills and sort of wants to be a solution-oriented kind of guy, which most guys who are doing the work are going to be, which means that you're actually taking a lot of your time and energy and devoting it to their problems instead of your own. And I think that's one of the biggest things that guys forget is like how much time you actually spend maintaining relationships and maintaining that skill sets, right? If you go out to go day gaming for a couple hours, like maybe you get one date and then you have to prep a couple hours for that. And then it's a couple hours on the date and a few more hours for that. It's like 12, 16, 20 hours wrapped up in one girl for one date, start to finish, everything considered. That's a lot of time.
Yeah.
It's a lot of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, I mean, you know, I'm obviously a dating coach. I'm somebody who writes about dating and all that kind of stuff. I've lived that lifestyle. It's not like I am now suddenly saying I'll become MGTOW or, you know, unplug or whatever. Because I think actually spending a decent amount of time doing all of that stuff is can be fun, and it can lead you to a very, you know, exciting and interesting and kind of fun lifestyle. But I just think momentarily there are times when pulling back is a sensible thing to do, and it can actually be a really worthwhile thing to do for yourself as
Absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. Time and season for everything, right?
Yeah, definitely. And there's another piece to this actually, which is that a phrase that I quite like that James Tusk has been used, my colleague James Tusk, colleague, day game expert James Tusk, often talks about this concept called amor fati, which is the Nietzsche idea of love your life. Look, whatever happens to you, just love it, because that was the thing that was meant to happen, and you're going to get something from it. And that's it's a bit like the Jocko Willink good idea. You know, whatever happens to you, it's like good. You got dumped,
right.
Good, because now I've got to learn how to, you know, live on my own. Or I've got to learn how to do X, Y, or Z. And one way of looking at lockdowns, or the remaining part of this lockdown period, perhaps, is to say, well, listen, you know, I've got another 2 months, 3 months of restrictions. Good, because that's going to give me the opportunity to figure out what the hell I want to do with my life, figure out how, you know, get myself in shape, get myself sorted out, do the X, Y, and Z. So I'm in a much better position when I come out of it.
90 days is a lifetime when it comes to self-improvement. 90 days is enough to do. If you dieted for 90 days, seriously, you lose 10, 15, 20 pounds. If you hit the gym seriously for 90 days, you can totally change your look. If you spent 90 days figuring out your style, getting a decent wardrobe, massive change, right? You spend 90 days getting a photographer to get better photos for your online dating profile, massive change, right? Spend 90 days making connections with guys who are doing the same thing, who are also doing the work. Also guys doing the, you know, walking down that same path you are. Huge difference. 90 days getting your own online business up, 90 days starting a blog, 90 days doing YouTube, 90 days doing whatever. That is absolutely game changing, right? As long as you're willing to pull the trigger, dedicate yourself, and do the work.
Absolutely, yeah. No, you're right. It's a transformative length of time, isn't it? And actually, I forget which book this is from. I don't know if it's from the James Clear book about habits, but there is this idea that it's not from that book. I think it's from something else. But there's this idea that you can implement a new habit within a relatively short period of time, can't you? And I think it's something like 6 weeks or something like that. If you just try to implement a new habit, you can make it internalized within a very brief period of time.
Exactly. And if you've got 90 days, that's enough to install a couple of really solid, really critical habits, right? If you just did the work to make diet and exercise a habit, just a natural part of your life, that right there is going to be putting yourself in the top 10 to 20% of guys.
Yeah.
That alone.
Yeah.
Even if you do nothing else, right? That alone is going to get you in that top 10 to 20%.
Yeah.
Right. And you've got time to do that. You still have time. It's not too late. Are you going to look like, you know, Hugh Jackman or freaking Chris Hemsworth in 90 days? Probably not. Are you going to look a lot better than you were? Yes. Are you going to look a lot better than the average guy out there? Absolutely. You're going to look a lot better than the average guy who hasn't done anything during the lockdown? 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, and that's the thing, is it's all relative. You don't have to be the fastest guy on the planet. You just got to be faster than the guy behind you who's the bear is chasing, right? You don't have to be the ultimate in order to get something. You just got to be better than most other people out there. And that's not hard to do these days.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. It's incremental change, isn't it? Incremental change over time. Because like with game, for example, it's not like saying, okay, yeah, but if you were next to XYZ dating coach, could you get the same results as him? Or if you were next to this male model type guy and you were talking to this girl in a bar and you're competing for her, who would come out on top, you or him? And it's kind of like, well, it doesn't really matter, because that's not what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in proving myself. I speak for myself, but I feel like this is a mindset that guys should have. I'm not interested in proving myself against these random other people. What I'm interested in is going forward, can my life be better? Can I have more choice? Can I have more autonomy? That's the important thing. It's not being in a competition with other people.
And one thing that I think that people miss is that you're not actually in direct competition, because the odds are that if you and I were in a bar, there's going to be women who vibe with you very naturally. There's going to be women who vibe with me very naturally. And odds are I can get a girl that you can't, just because she's going to be more attracted to who I am as a person. And you're going to be able to get girls that I'm not going to be able to, because they're more attracted to your vibe as a person. Right? So I don't have to get the girls you're going for.
Yes.
I just have to find a way to show the women who are going to be attracted to me who I am, so they come walking my way to make my life easy. Right? I don't have to get a model. I just have to find somebody that I enjoy being with. Somebody who's going to push my buttons and everything else, right? I don't have to get your girl. I just have to get a girl from me.
Yes.
So why would I try and compete with you? Like, that's fucking stupid.
Exactly. And it's not a zero-sum game. It's not as well. And guys online would have you believe that it is, because there's this narrative of like, oh no, it's just the Chads who are getting all of the women, and everybody else has to, I don't know, make black pill videos or whatever. But actually, that's not reality. I mean, sure, if you're very good looking and well put together and whatever, you're going to have a lot of options in the dating marketplace. But that doesn't mean there's nothing left for everybody else. And you know, like you say, this isn't about it being a competition. If you're hanging out with a mate who's incredibly good looking and he sucks up all the attention every time you go out, well, maybe you want to try going out separately to him a few times a week, or maybe you want to try doing some day game, or maybe you want to try some different avenues. You know, you don't have to put yourself in direct competition with somebody else and then measure your results. You know, there's plenty of women out there. There's plenty of opportunities out there.
And the other thing is that if you've got a guy who's like really attractive that you're going out with, that has better game and stuff like that, if he's a good wing, he's going to help you, because he's going to big you up and DHV you and everything else. And you can do the same thing with him, because again, because women like different things, there's going to be the women that just want the short-term fling with the hot guy with the six-pack abs. And then there's going to be the women who are in that same group that want something that has a little bit more deep and meaningful connection, right? They're going to fall for that, like, broke starving artist who's just like got that dream, but he's got that way with words, right? That Chad with, 7 IQ is just not going to be able to do. So having different styles, having different looks, and having different vibes means that each one of you is going to be able to pull a different segment of that female population in that area. So play off each other, reinforce each other, give women options, which they love, make them feel different things, which they love. And then the women are going to choose the guy that they most want, right? You just have to leverage who you are and what you have the best way you can, market yourself the best way you can, and the buyers will come.
Yeah, I mean, there's a market for everybody, really. Everybody's got their own people. It's not even saying a market, really. I mean, any guy, and actually any girl as well, are going to have a segment of the population who are just naturally going to be attracted to them, or just naturally going to vibe with them. And the issue is not that they don't exist. The issue is just going out there and finding them. And one of the good things about volume with dating, that is to say, going out and just meeting lots of people, is that you're more likely to come across those people that are just naturally into you, or you just naturally got that kind of chemistry with. And that's what you're doing, really. You know, you go out and you start a conversation with a girl and she's not interested, or she says, I've got a boyfriend. It's like, okay, fine, whatever. Have a great day. Because you're not concerned with her. You're concerned with meeting the girl where there is that spark, where there is that vibe, where there is something to build on.
And that's, I think, two things. Number one, I think that's one of the biggest lessons of the whole phrase Amor Fati of love fate, is just put yourself in a position where luck can happen. The more times you put yourself in a position where luck can happen, the more opportunities you give yourself, the more likely you are to find what you're looking for and find that like person out of the blue that you never expected to meet. That's just like you click instantly, right? The other thing I'd say is that, you know, kind of going back to archetypes and stuff like that, there was Rich Cooper did a interview with Andrew Tate, and Tate was talking about how rolling around in Lambo isn't as good anymore because all the women who wanted that have already left Romania to go to Dubai and Miami and everything like that, right? Women want different things.
Yes.
Women want different things. So you don't have to pretend to be anybody else. You just got to be the best version of yourself.
Yes, exactly. There's a market for everybody, and even people like the Tates. I mean, I met Tristan Tate last year actually, and even he would say not every girl's going to be into him. As much as they have the bravado online and everything, the reality is there are some girls that just aren't going to be into that particular thing that he's offering. And that girl may be into something, maybe it's something very different. So there's always going to be a market for what you're offering. But the important thing is that I suppose the first thing is to understand yourself, to know what you are, to know what your offer is, then to improve yourself within that to the best of your ability, and then to go out there and market the product, which is basically to do game, or at least to go out and socialize and meet lots of different people. Exactly. Here's an interesting point, actually. I wanted to ask you this. Sounds Online says, do you guys think people will be raging to get out and party after lockdown, or are they more likely to become introverted and stay at home more often now? Which is an interesting question. To that, I would add, I don't know if you've seen those sort of articles, Ryan, with people saying, oh, this is going to be a new roaring 20s. We're going to see loads of degeneracy and all of that. I've tweeted a few of those things. It's quite amusing. Do you think that's likely? Or actually, as Sounds Online is saying, do you think that perhaps there are going to be some people who are going to be permanently more introverted now?
Well, I was saying a lot earlier in our conversation about how, there are definitely some people who are reacting far more with fear. And I think those people are just never going to get back to normal. Right. But I think that that's a relatively small portion of the population. I think that most people, your average person, has been freaking dying to get out and do stuff. Right.
Yes.
So all the girls who used to be into partying and used to be in the clubbing and everything else are going to rage. They're going to rage. Right. Everybody who's been normal socialization is going to go out and they're going to kind of overdose on it for a while. And I think you will see a bit of insanity. I think you will see a lot of relationships end that were just like COVID relationships because, well, if I can bubble up with one or two people, then I'm bubbling up with one or two people and this is going to be it. And then now the opportunities happen. Now they have choice again. Now they have access to things again. Relationships switch up very quickly, right? They leave the stuff that they've had just because they had to. And they go find what they actually want, or they go find a little variety, right?
I think you're right. I think that the proportion of people who are going to want to hide behind the sofa forever is very small. I think there will be people, undoubtedly, but I think just from observing, around here and observing what happened last summer when we opened up here, I think the hunger to get out there is very strong, because I think fundamentally we are, whether you're an introvert or not, we are ultimately a social species, and we want to come together in more ways than one. But no, we want to come together, and I think actually one of the things that this has shown us is the importance of those big communal events. Like massive sports events. When you think about big crowds, I mean, you think about like a rave or the Cancun foam party, but then you might think about a football match or a soccer match or whatever. And then maybe like a big religious event when you get loads of people in Rome and they're there to see the Pope or whatever it is. All of these things, it's all people coming together. It's a very primeval human need, isn't it?
Yeah,
to
absolutely.
come together with other people. And I don't think that's not going anywhere. That's just inherent within us.
I'm just curious to see like how crazy the orgies are going to be, and the swingers clubs are going to be, and the BDSM clubs are going to be. Like, that's going to be nuts.
Well, so am I. And theoretically, we could see some action in the UK actually in June, because what they're saying at the moment is that they're going to lift all restrictions by the 21st of June. Now, whether that actually ends up happening or not, I don't know. But we could see the fetish clubs 22nd of June could be there with the the GIMP mask on down at Torture Garden, and be very interesting to see what it's like. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting as we come out of this. It really, really is. I mean, I think it even for myself though, I have to say, like, not that I wouldn't go to a club or I wouldn't go to a thing like that, because obviously I would, but even for me, there is a slight thinking of, God, that's so 2019, isn't it? Before all this happened, the idea of going into this sweaty club surrounded by people, but at the same time, I also crave it, because that's just such a part of the human experience that I don't think we should forego.
I agree. And I think that you bring up an interesting point. I think things have kind of permanently shifted in some way. Yeah. Because people are not going to go back to how things were. You know, it's just one of those things. I don't think they're going to go back to where they were, but I do think that we're going to take what was and like create something better with it.
Yes.
I don't know what that's going to look like, right? Maybe the orgies become a little bit.
Ryan, you're on mute. Yeah, Ryan, I think your sound's gone. I think Ryan's sound's gone. Yeah. Hello?
Am I? Hold on.
That's come
There you
through.
go.
That's come
Okay.
through.
Don't know what happened there.
Acts of God. But
Must have been.
yes. Well, look, I mean, I think we're coming up on the to the end of the show now because we've been on for a while, but it's been a great conversation as always. I think fundamentally there's a lot to be excited for, really. I mean, like, just God help us all that there's not some kind of like crazy, I don't know, some sort of like something that's going to set us all back. But if we are, broadly speaking, moving kind of in the right direction, then I think there's a lot to look forward to. Just before you cut off, you were saying, I think we're gonna build, something better is going to come of this, and I think that's true. But I also do believe, I think pretty quickly, a lot of this is going to get forgotten because I think ultimately the human desire. I mean, yes, there's going to be a few people who are going to be worried about germs and social distancing and all this kind of thing. But I think the mass of people just want to get down and dirty again. To be honest, you know what I mean. And I think very quickly, particularly when a few alcoholic drinks are involved, I think it's just going to go back in many cases to how things were before.
I think you're right. I think that we have already kind of hit our limit a while ago, and people are just being polite and putting up with stuff because they feel like they have to. And as soon as you release that pressure, like there's going to be a lot of pent up demand that's going to get satisfied in a hurry. I think this summer is going to be insane.
Yes.
I think things stabilize again in the fall and the winter, right? But I think that cuffing season come this winter is going to also be insane, right? So it's going to be an interesting next year for sure.
Yes, absolutely. I really think it is. A couple of people asking what to wear to Torture Garden, which is a whole topic in itself. But if you go to their website, you can have a look at some of the galleries. Some people wear some pretty crazy stuff there, I have to say. But if you want if you want a simple, easy thing to get you through the door, then just a pair of like leather trousers or a pair of black PVC trousers or something like that is kind of sufficient. You can get like some kind of a fancy top or some sort of you can get one of those harness type things as well if you're feeling a little bit adventurous. They look quite cool. But yeah, basically pair of leather trousers will get you in and you can have your top off. So get that beach body ready, chassis sorted out before summer. But yeah, have a look on the galleries. You can see
90 days. We got 90
Absolutely.
days.
90 days, absolutely. And Rabbit Travels is saying aliens will arrive and fuck it up again. Which we're going to have to lock down because there's been an alien invasion. Yeah. Okay, cool. Well, listen, it's been awesome as always. So what have you got coming up and where can they go and find you?
Well, you can find me here on YouTube at Hypnosis for Men. Here, you're kind enough to link my channel. I'll be putting up some more material on there. You can find me at hypnosisformen.net is my website. You can also find me at Twitter and Instagram at Hypnosis for Men. I will be putting out some more content on YouTube. I'm looking to start doing some more longer-term coaching sort of projects, probably in the middle of this year, which would be interesting. So instead of focusing on individual problems, doing much more of a unfucking your entire life kind of project. Right. So that'll be interesting. I'll be working on that over the next couple of months. Very good. Very good. And if guys want to come to you because they need help in terms of some of their inner issues and maybe sorting out some of the childhood unresolved stuff that they've got going on, they can do that through your website, right? That's correct. That's correct. Book a call with me. We'll sit down, talk for half an hour or so, figure out what you're dealing with, what kind of issues you want to manage, and figure out a best way forward. Usually, guys can take care of things in 1 or 2 sessions in general.
Good stuff.
It's a pretty fast process.
Awesome stuff. So look up his Hypnosis for Men site, and alternatively, if anyone messages me and asks, I'll pass you on to Ryan for help as well, because he's a great guy. He's a very solid. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's talking about, and he's a very, very solid guy. So get your inner game issues sorted out, and now is probably a good time to do it as well, just because in view of what we've been talking about. Because it's all like, on the one hand, yes, you don't want to be rusty with your social skills, but on the other hand, if there's some underlying stuff that you need to get sorted, then now is a good time to address that.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, for me, just hit subscribe. Hit subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notifications bell, give us a like, give us a thumbs up, thumbs down, comment under the video to help tickle the algorithm. Aside from that, a couple of things. As we've said during the show, grab Renegade Dating Blueprint, which is my collection of, there's 11 books in there actually about dating, the dating marketplace. So if you're looking for some inspiration and some stuff about naughty S&M parties in there as well. So if you're looking for some inspiration as we come out of lockdowns, then check those books out. It's only $39. And you can also support me on Patreon. I've got a $5 Patreon tier now, and I'm going to be answering your questions on a weekly basis for members on that tier. So again, the link's below. And that's it. Great show as always. Cheers, Ian. Good to see you, man. EC Smooth says Ryan is solid.
Thank you much.
Absolutely. Sounds Online says Mankini talk about peacocking lol, because somebody had said, Rabbit Travels had said, is my Kashmir Mankini all right for Torture Garden? So yeah, it probably would be, to be honest. Yeah, exactly. Cool. Okay. Good stuff, guys. Good to see everybody. And we will see you again very soon. Bye-bye.